Hi everybody, this is Ollie Cantos here, and I am so excited to welcome those of you who are brand new to our community and to tell you how great it is to have you aboard, and I look forward to getting to know all of you. So today, for this installment of the Visionary series, I'd like to talk with all of you about a very, very important topic that affects all of us, and that is the tendency for most of us to worry. Have you ever been in a situation where you are in a specific situation at work or within your personal life and you worry about a specific outcome and you imagine in your mind the horrible things that can happen if you don't do something right or if things don't turn out the way you hoped they would? When you think about those times when you've worried, I bet you can visualize it in your mind perfectly. And when you listen to those thoughts in your mind about what you worry about, I bet you also that you have physical reactions relating to that worry. Your heart can end up beating faster, you can end up having sweaty palms, your forehead could start sweating, you can just be panicked over all of it. All over the mere thought of your worst fears coming true, and then wondering how will anything work if the thing that you're worried about ends up coming to pass. We all do it. We've all done it. I've done it. But I'm here to tell you that there's actually another way. And this actually is something that I've had to learn over time, and we all keep working on getting better at it. But one thing that I've learned specifically is that when I've worried about something, I have had a tendency to think of the worst case scenario and thinking that if that horrible event were to happen, how my world would fall apart and how I felt like there's just no way I would just die if X thing happened, whatever it might happen to be. And I know that all of you have been in those sorts of situations where you just imagine the worst, and driven by the thoughts of what could possibly happen in the worst way, I'm sure that you've been driven to take action, but doing it in a way that you're stressed and just trying to work on getting it done, and you might have ended up achieving whatever it was that you wanted to get done, but yet you were driven by that intense worry in wondering if you could ever achieve what you needed to get taken care of. But that's not really a way to live when there's another way. In the same way that in our mind's eye, we visualize fully the horrible things that could come to pass and how we attach such emotion and fear to it, our minds don't know the difference as to whether something has actually happened or if it could happen. And so we have the opportunity to leverage that to our advantage when we understand how the brain works. And this is something that's important to understand for all of us too. In the same way that we have worried about things, and I don't mean just you, I mean me as well. Whenever you and I, any of you who are watching this out there, whenever you've worried about things and whenever I've worried about things, the anxiety that comes over us can be at times extremely, extremely paralyzing, where we just wonder how we can even take the next step because we're so afraid of making a misstep. And so we operate out of a place of stress and intense anxiety and worry and fear and just these horrible feelings that we would rather not have. But in the same way that our minds have that ability to visualize the negative, we can actually use our mind's capability toward the positive by anticipating a different outcome. And it's easier said than done at times when we don't understand how it works. But I've discovered a way for it to work. And I wanted to share that with you because I'm going through this literally myself, and I'm going to be talking with you straight about my own experiences here. But the thing that I learned is that the first thing that we need to do to change things to the positive, it's not just merely thinking positive, that whole thing, because that's oversimplistic. But it's literally to play it out all the way and just say to ourselves, to imagine, let's say, whatever the worst possible scenario is that we imagine in our minds, the way that you might imagine things in your minds with whatever any of you worry about. Imagine that it did happen. Just imagine that it actually did take place. Would you survive it? Of course, the initial thought might be, there's no way. But when you think about it, more often than not, even if the worst were to come true, you'd have the ability to survive it. And you would, because we have all been through crises in our lives, and we ended up surviving those. Think about how so many people in life have undergone so much, and yet there is a second act. You know, act one would be this horrible thing that ended up coming to pass, and that's, you know, by all intents and for all intents and purposes, the person is done. Here's a big example. Jimmy Carter, as President of the United States, had a difficult presidency to the point where, at the end of his first term, he ended up leaving the presidency because of President Ronald Reagan winning the election by a landslide. So people would have thought, you know, Jimmy Carter's done. But what ended up ultimately happening was, with Jimmy Carter's second act, he is regarded by everybody, Republican and Democrat, as having a stellar second act, where he ended up winning the Nobel Peace Prize, and where he has been such a force of good throughout the world, where people regard him as the best former president. And think about someone else too. There's this gentleman who founded J.C. Penney, and this gentleman was told that by his father on his father's deathbed, son, you're going to make it. I know you're going to make it. And so what his son did was he ended up building a chain of retail stores, and then he lost his fortune. He lost it all. But yet, because of the belief that he had in himself, and because of remembering what his father said to him, he knew that ultimately he would make it, because that's how much he believed in what his father said, because of what his father said to him. So even under the most impossible circumstances, and even though his efforts had some adversity, he ended up coming back in business and building J.C. Penney to the major force within the retail industry that it continues to be today. So it isn't just a matter of J.C. Penney or of Jimmy Carter or of anybody that you can think of who might be famous or rich who may have had adverse circumstances. We all have adverse circumstances that we have faced. But yet, those individuals who've been through so much, who thought that the world would end for them if their worst fears came to pass, they ended up coming back and doing all right, and doing stellarly well. The same may be true for us. So we need to look fear in the eye and literally imagining what would happen if a specific situation were to come to pass that we're afraid of the most. What would happen to us? And at first we think, you know, life is just over. Our world would end. Our worlds would end. There's just no way we could survive X, whatever it is. I can tell you that I know that you may be thinking that, because that's what I have thought at times. Like, oh my gosh, if I don't get this done, these horrible things will come to pass. But all of the times in the past when I've had that kind of worry, ultimately none of those things came to pass. It was just my worst fears that I just allowed to take over a situation where I'd be motivated by worry rather than being motivated by something more positive. We all do this. All of us do this. At least all of us do this until learning a different way. And this is the way that I have to show you. I want you to think back 5 years ago about the things that worried you then. And I want you to think about the worst possible fears that you had at that time. And then ask yourselves, did those things really come to pass as awful as I had thought? Or ask yourselves if, now in looking back, if any of those things really mattered anymore. 5 years later from when you worried about those things, whatever they may be, back then, do they matter now? Do they really matter right now? I remember when I was in law school, and I was worried about just getting my work done. And I worried, oh my gosh, what if my professor doesn't like what I've written for this specific class, whatever it might happen to be. And I remember distinctly being paralyzed with worry. And so I got my work done, my paper done. But after it was done, it was done. Years later, does that even matter anymore? It was a paper for one class. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm already a lawyer. I've been a lawyer for what will soon be 14 years. Doesn't matter. But at the time when I was a student, it felt like it was the whole world, that if I don't get a certain grade on this, then these horrible things will happen. And I just imagine a cascading effect. Have you ever done this? Have any of you done this to yourselves? Where you'd imagine this cascading effect, like first this horrible thing will happen, which will lead to some other horrible thing happen, and which will lead to other things horribly happening. I mean, and then we get to the point where we fill ourselves and we get ourselves built, just worked up over all of this. And then because of the fear, we create anxiety in our lives that at times can be almost literally unbearable. But why live that way, folks? Why should we live that way? We weren't meant to live that way. Nor should you live that way now. Nor should any of us live that way now. Instead of having a crisis mentality, of learning that way, here's how we address this. Okay, and let me just tell you, if just using lab rats as an example, and this was talked about in the book Psycho-Cybernetics, and it's a book I recommend that we'll talk about later. But lab rats, when they are in a crisis mode where they need to find food, they're stressed. What they do is when they're stressed, they work to find the food and they eventually find the food. But what happens is, because that was learned under a stressful set of circumstances, that's the only way they know. So if they move the location of the food, then those rats who learned how to find the food in a stressful situation only end up going to where they thought the food was. Of course, we're not rats, but the thing is that when we learn and when we grow under worrisome circumstances where we worry and we're stressed and we have anxiety or even depression about stuff, when we worry, then we learn in crisis mode, and then we only think of that one way of addressing, of dealing with something, which is, again, a crisis reaction. But instead, what we do to address all of this is to learn under no pressure circumstances. Start off by working to acquire the skill by literally just in a relaxed way, with no stakes on the table, just going through the mechanics of learning something. Not in crisis mode, but learning how to do the particular skill that's needed for the particular situation. But in the process of learning those skills, you do it while relaxed, where there are no stakes on the table, where it's all right. You can just let it happen. Just let yourself learn. Don't pressure yourselves to succeed at this point. Okay? Just learn it in a relaxed way, knowing that it's no big deal if it doesn't happen. Matter of fact, just do it without even worrying about what the outcome is, because the purpose here is just to learn something. And then the next step is to take action by putting into practice what you're learning, just allowing it to happen. And as you do that, then the last step is, as you visualize that, just execute. Here's an example. The author of Psycho-Cybernetics ended up helping a kid who was learning baseball. He was trying to hit a ball, and the author was with his friend, and his 10-year-old son was working on trying to hit the ball. He just couldn't do it. He just kept trying too hard. Is it possible to try too hard? Well, heck, if you're filled with anxiety, then the orders that you send to your brain won't execute right, because you're in crisis mode, so you just end up not being able to do it as effectively. So what this author did is he had the kid first just watch the ball being pitched. He told the kid, and it was done about 10 times, and he had the kid keeping the bat on his shoulder, not swinging, just watch the ball come across. The next step, he then had the kid follow in his mind as the ball was pitched, had him follow where the ball would connect with the bat. Not doing it yet, just keeping the bat on his shoulder and just not swinging, just watching where the ball was and imagining precisely where the ball should hit the bat. The final step, the ball was pitched, and based on what he remembered, just let it happen. Swing. He hit the ball and made a friend for life, this author. We need to do the same thing, folks. We need to understand the fundamental value of finding ways to learn our new skills in non-pressure situations where we don't have stakes on the table. And where the stakes aren't high at all, we just learn in an atmosphere where we'll just allow happen, whatever happens, happens. And then in that state, as we learn what we need to learn, then we apply the skill and we'll end up doing it in a way completely different than if we had learned under crisis circumstances. Here's another example from the book. If you throw someone in a deep pool of water who doesn't know how to swim, out of the survival instinct, the person will find his or her way and will struggle and will swim, not gracefully exactly, but will swim and will get himself or herself to safety. Ideally, that's what would happen, right? But that person who knows how to survive if thrown in the water, because just the survival instinct kicks in and just tries to kick and kick and kick and move their arms in a way just to try to keep themselves from going under, and then they eventually end up being able to save themselves. Those people aren't exactly going to become championship swimmers, right? So it's a narrow way of thinking, and that pathway in that case is just to learn how to survive. But why be in survival mode when instead we can eliminate the unnecessary worry out of our lives by learning in a relaxed situation, by creating that for ourselves. And we need also to understand that when things intensify for us, whether it's a faster heart rate, whatever it is, we need to understand the difference between fear and excitement. When we have those feelings, especially when something has to get done, we might have an intense situation and we might have a reaction to it physically. Our hearts might go faster, we might start sweating a little bit, etc. But that's another way of that's another way of characterizing excitement. What you do with that energy can be one of two things. You can either consider that to be a source of anxiety, or instead, you can use that and leverage that to your advantage to get done what you have to get done. But the difference between the first way and the second way is the first way is negative and the second way is positive. And this takes some practice. We all need to practice at this. No matter who we are, we just need to learn to find a way to get better at this stuff. But it takes some practice. But this is the solution. So if any of you have been paralyzed by worry and fear, here's the solution. You have it now right in front of you that we've just talked about. When I learned this, I felt like my whole world changed, because it applies to everything. It applies to our jobs. It applies to business. It applies to our personal lives, where we can end up worrying ourselves into a frenzy and being in a state of mind that we would rather not be in, and live life in a way that's ultimately unhappy. Or instead, we can do the alternative approach that I've talked about, and we can fill our lives with more of a sense of anticipation for what we will get done. And these things I'm telling you, as in my particular case, I have deadlines that I need to still meet. I can worry, oh my gosh, what is going to happen to me if I miss the deadline? What if I don't produce quality product? What's going to happen to the team as far as the team at the office? Oh my gosh, all these things, right? But when I step back and I just let my mind move away from crisis mode, just knowing that ultimately it's going to work out, because my mind is freer to be in a state of calm, I'm able better to get the work done than if I were in a frenzy in the first place. It's not fun being stressed. It's just not. Any of you who are out there who have stress in your lives, you know it's not fun. So why have it? Why when it's not necessary? So that's what I wanted to talk with you about today. Whether you're in business with us, whether you have financial worries, whether you have personal circumstances that you need to deal with and you're paralyzed with worry with that, focus instead on, in a relaxed state, and imagining yourselves in a relaxed way, learning the skills needed to address the situations at hand, facing fear directly in the face, and ultimately saying, hey, if that happens, what's the worst that could possibly happen, really? I mean, really, what is the worst that can possibly happen? And finding ways to shrink that monster so that we don't feel like our lives are over if the particular circumstance happens. Like, just imagine, if the worst thing were to happen, then what? What would really, really happen? Rationally, what would really happen? And if that were to take place, what would really happen? Just think it through all the way. And then move forward like you have nothing to lose. Because when you realize that you can handle whatever the worst possible case scenario is, then you can move forward in freedom. Because you've just freed yourself of it, just because knowing, well, hey, all right if it happens. And it's not to say you don't care, but it's to say that you are not going to allow worry to paralyze you again. And in this new state of mind, you get the work done. You get the stuff done of whatever you needed to get done. I mean, it's amazing. It's really profound. If you can get what I've just told you, and if that alone transforms your life, I'm grateful that you're on my list. Wow. All right. Today, I have action assignments for you. The first thing, I want you to think about the things that are worrying you in life. And I want you to attach different emotions to those things. Not by trying to change your emotions, but try to change what you focus on. Instead of focusing on a horrible series of circumstances, imagine things working out better and visualize things working out the way you want. Think about what you want. Do not think about what you don't want. It's the law of attraction. You get what you think about. Don't think about what you don't want. Think about what you do want. And then the next thing is, imagine if the worst circumstances in those situations were to come to pass. Imagine you surviving them. And imagine putting those things into perspective and saying, yeah, well, that's rough. And there are times that there could be some tragic stuff, but not to downplay those at all, but to say that we need to not allow these imagined futures to be the ultimate reality. And the way to do that is to not focus on them. So that's the second thing. With the monsters of worry that we have that are the sources of worry, look at those things and imagine making the monster smaller. Where it's like, well, okay, fine. If this happens, well, what's the worst that could possibly happen? All right, well, is that really that bad? Is it really that bad? And I bet you for the most part, the answer is no. Let's say it's worry about a job interview. You don't get the job. Okay, well, you're no worse off than before you asked for the job. Is it really that bad? If one thing doesn't work out the way you want, is it really going to put you in a dire situation of life and death? Really? I mean, most of the time the answer is no. So, just get rid of it. The third thing, of course, today, with any worry that you have, including worrying about being a part of this business, get rid of it. Instead, focus on how this business, with the right work and persistence and mindset, can change your lives. It's changed my life. It's changed the life of my family. It can change your life too. It really can. Join me in this business by clicking the link. Get started with me. Be a part of our team. Be a part of the prosperity team, and specifically with me or with the visionary team. Be a part of us, part of the Empower Network. Do it. Let us show you how to market yourselves online with any business you're already doing. Let us show you how you can drive traffic to your businesses. Let us show you how you can make a great income through the Empower Network directly, in addition to whatever you're already doing. We can show you that. But it starts by your taking action by clicking the link at the bottom of this page. Clicking on the link and getting started with me. Get out your credit card right now. Right now. Click on the link and get involved with me. Wow, that would be just amazing. And if any of you would like to stay in touch with me, if you just found this on YouTube or you found it some other way instead of getting it from me directly, I'd invite you to go to www.visionary-team.com, provide me your best email address, and then click the submit button. So that way I can stay in touch with you on a regular basis and provide you stuff of value. If any of you have been part of my team, you know that I work to give you value just by your association with me. I love for you to join this business. In addition, I want your lives to be better just because you're associated with me, period. I'd love for you to pass this video forward. Share it with people. If it can help somebody, please share it. Send it forward. I guess that's an indirect next action step. It's a third action, I guess, thinking it through. Share this. Share this with people you know. I'd really be appreciative to you for that. Together, let's work on changing this world. Let's make this world better just by helping people to improve the quality of their lives each day. Imagine being able to blog and to do other simple things and make money being paid to do what you love. Imagine being told that you can do in life whatever you want to do, you can be yourself, and we want you for you. That's what you found here. That's what you get with the Prosperity Team for just even having a blogging platform. The Prosperity Team has additional training for you that you can get no other way than by being with me or other members of the Prosperity Team. There's no way to get the value-added training that we'll be giving you. And that's in addition to what you're getting through the Visionary series. Just do it. Wow, it would be so incredible to get to work with you. You get involved with this business, I will call you personally and we will work on building the kind of future that you want. It's just going to be amazing. So thank you for watching, and I will look forward to hearing from you. Join me with all of this, and I will see you on the next installment. You take good care, and thanks for watching.